Good morning. It's now 10:39, and I would like to call this sitting to order. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Anthony Vera, and I would like to extend a very warm welcome. I appreciate your attendance here today. I would also like to welcome the viewing and listening audience to what is the 27th public hearing of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises. The purpose of this meeting is to commence our inquiry to assess whether the National Information and Communications Technology Company Limited, iGovTT, has been fulfilling its mandate, and if so, to what extent. The role of the committee is firstly to examine the issues which arose based on the National Information and Communication Technology Companies Limited written submissions to the committee's questions, and secondly, to aid the company in fulfilling its mandate. This meeting is being broadcast live on Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel ParlView. Listeners and viewers can participate by sending comments relating to today's engagement with the National Information and Communication Technology Company Limited, iGov, the Ministry of Public Administration, and the Ministry of Finance Investments Division via email to parl101@ttparliament.org or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament or on Twitter @ttparliament. We are very pleased to be able to welcome the officials of iGov, the Ministry of Public Administration, and the Ministry of Finance Investments Division. May I now invite you to introduce yourselves.
Good morning, Sean Rock, Chairman iGovTT.
Good morning, Chair and members. Claudel McKellar, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Public Administration.
Good morning, members. Kirk Henry, Chief Executive Officer, iGovTT.
Good morning, Christine Ferreira, Head Finance and Administration.
Good morning, Jennifer Lachman, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Investments Division, Ministry of Finance.
Good morning, Chintamani Suku, Acting Director, Investments Division.
Good morning, Karima Ali, Associate Professional.
Good morning, Chair members. Abigail Bainu, Ministry of Public Administration, Manager Policy, Strategy and Monitoring.
Thank you all. Before I ask members of the committee to introduce themselves, we do have apologies from member Ms. Sherry-Ann Critchlow-Coburn and Mr. Adrian Leonce. Member Mark is running late, but he will be joining us shortly. And before, again, asking members to introduce themselves, may I just acknowledge for the record the very important role of our committee support team and the assistance that they give. Thank you. Members.
Good morning, Foster Cummings, member.
Morning, Fazil Karim, member.
Morning, Lester Henry, Vice Chairman.
Morning, General Antoine, member.
Thank you. May I remind everyone to put your cell phones on silent or have them switched off. And without further ado, may I ask key officials to make some brief opening remarks.
Good morning again, Chair and honorable members of the Joint Select Committee, representatives from the ministries as well as iGovTT, and listening and viewing audience. Today it is indeed a pleasure to participate in these proceedings to discuss matters of importance to our nation. Given the nature of the discussions, I would begin by first presenting preliminary context vis-a-vis the National ICT Company Limited, iGovTT, for the benefit of those present physically as well as remotely. iGovTT was formed in accordance with Cabinet decision dated April 30th, 2009, and has celebrated 10 years in existence as of July 2019. Under the guidance and policy direction of the Ministry of Public Administration, iGovTT's primary mandate is to provide ICT consulting and support services to ministries, divisions, departments, and agencies, MDAs, in order to achieve more effective alignment, coordination, integration, consistency, security, interoperability, and cost effectiveness across government for ICT-related projects and initiatives. The company serves as the execution arm of government with the responsibility for the execution and administration of the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago's enterprise-wide ICT strategies and programming with functions which include inter alia, physical infrastructure, e-government services, foundation services, infrastructure, support for sector solutions, as well as relevant legislation and policy support, change management, capacity building, and project/program management within the ICT realm. The company addresses the aforementioned through a range of services provided for GOT, Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. These include government to citizen or G2C type services. One of our exemplars there is the TT Connect unit of iGovTT, which is focused on providing citizen services as an extension of the various MDAs that we support. TT Connect currently provides over 45 citizen-centric services on behalf of 16 MDAs across 8 touchpoints. Through these various channels, citizens have access to centers that provide information, services, and programs offered by the government and state agencies. The company also has several e-services currently under development, including e-appointment and Employ TT. We can speak more about this as the discussions ensue. We also deliver government-to-government services. These focus on a shared services approach where we are looking at common foundational IT services and solutions in support of the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago so that ministries, departments, divisions, and agencies can focus on their core IT business systems and not on these building block services. This shared infrastructure is delivered to all main ministries in GOT, and this has remained consistently so even as ministries are formed or subsumed. Additionally, government agencies, in addition to the ministries, also use one of our hallmark platforms for infrastructure governance. Presently, this network is being upgraded to ensure that the services provided remain relevant to users. The upgrade will provide increased mailbox sizes for email and overall enhanced management and security for the network and the services it provides. We also are responsible for a slew of consulting and support services, as I mentioned before, including project management, business, digital transformation services, and capacity building. Under capacity building, I would break that into 2 aspects. The first aspect relates to what we do in support of the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Each year, iGov consolidates training requirements across the MDAs and drives training workshops, ensuring continuous knowledge and skills transfer to MDAs. Over the last fiscal year, 2018-19, 11 workshops were delivered to a total of 178 participants across 103 MDAs. Also of note in the last year, iGovTT hosted its first hackathon, HackTT, for tertiary level students. These students worked on ICT solutions for existing national problems, which can significantly impact on Trinidad and Tobago's ICT sector, as well as in support of other sectors. At present, several of the solutions are being rolled out. We are extremely pleased with the executive management and staff of iGovTT in respect to the various support that they have offered to various stakeholders within the government as well as outside. And we are confident that the talented corp of employees who are committed to taking the company to new heights of success by continuously working with stakeholders to support delivery of ICT services in keeping with the National ICT Blueprint. Now, we are cognizant of the fact that iGovTT is a critical contributor to the implementation of the National ICT Plan and its delivery of e-government services to the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Despite the current economic landscape, there have been notable accomplishments in the company's bid to deliver various services within the public sector. As examples, over the last year, we successfully launched the e-cabinet solution, paving the way for cabinet ministers to remotely access cabinet notes and minutes electronically. This signaled the start of a new era to challenge cabinet to utilize ICT solutions while going green.
Dr. Rock,
Yeah.
we don't need to go into the specifics
Okay,
at this stage.
not a problem. Well, I'll conclude by saying again that we are thankful for being a part of the discussions at present, and I'd like to also thank our management and staff of iGovTT for helping us to provide our response to you, and we are open to provide any further responses as needed to clarify anything else.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking in the context of the Ministry of Public Administration. I think I'll be rather brief. Suffice it to say that the Ministry of Public Administration, as the line ministry for iGovTT, our mandate is essentially twofold. One, it deals with the whole issue of public service modernization and transformation, and secondly, national ICT. The nexus for the two being digital government, which really speaks to the issue of improving government's internal efficiency and improving service delivery to citizens. Service delivery from two standpoints, one being from the front end, the customer facing, and also those back end elements. iGov has been with the Ministry of Public Administration since its inception in 2009, except for a period June 2011 to, I believe, September 2015, but has been back with the Ministry of Public Administration since then. In fulfilling the ministry's mandate for national ICT, we rely heavily upon iGovTT, which is our key implementation arm, but there are also other entities such as the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. But the two entities plus others are really at the forefront of our ICT agenda. In essence, we are particularly pleased with the work that iGovTT has been able to do thus far. Dr. Rock spoke to many of the initiatives past and present. We are particularly pleased too, as evidenced by their submission today, and as a ministry, we look forward to facilitating the work of the committee and answering any questions that may be posed, whether in writing or in oral answer today. Thanks.
Thank you, P.S. Before opening up the floor for questions, I thought it might be useful to just highlight what struck me when we went through your very copious package. I think iGov is perhaps one of the most important players in the country today in terms of disruptive aspects, because what you're doing is going to change many things. But you have the possibility to be transformative, to really take us from the analog world into the digital world. So I see your role as a state enterprise as very, very important. And I think it would be useful to put on the public record some of the initiatives that you have started, and then we can interrogate those further. So you incorporated over 10 years ago in 2009. You are mandated as the executor and administrator of government's information and communications strategies and programs, correct? You provide ICT consulting and support services to the ministries and to our state agencies. You are essentially government's online service provider. E-business for the state. Would that be a fair assessment?
I would say, for the most part, that is a fair assessment, and I can discuss further as needed by the committee.
Great, thanks. So, highlighting some of the very important things you've done over the past 10 years, And I'm not going to go through the whole list, but these were the ones that struck me. Implementation of the laptop rollout project in secondary schools. Implementation of government's communication backbone, including network design, network expansion, network enhancement, and LAN connectivity. Basically, connectivity and access to all government ministries and state enterprises. You engineered the online tender notice system for potential suppliers of government goods and services via the TT Connect online portal. You established community-based ICT access centers for the provision of e-government services, free internet access, ICT and community needs-based training, e-learning resources, and conference facilities to citizens and business communities in the underserved parts of the country. So I assume that that will also encompass down the road things like distance learning. You procured hardware and software for the single electronic window system, a one-stop shop portal. Microsoft SharePoint deployment for the judiciary. Development and deployment of a document management system for the Judiciary's Administration Department, which I think is a very exciting development for our judiciary to go paperless. You're developing solutions for the TT Online Enterprise Government Portal, which will allow citizens to access government services. There's a call center project. There's the creation of an ICT roadmap for the prison service. In particular, system for inmate and inventory management. The implementation of electronic monitoring devices for the criminal justice system. We heard you mention, Chair, the launch of HackTT, but my understanding of HackTT is that it was geared towards bringing the country's best and brightest together to leverage and develop technology solutions in relation to our ICT challenges and needs. Project management services for implementation of a health information system for the new Arima and Point Fortin hospitals. Online recruitment systems to help citizens access job vacancies in the public service and at state agencies, and to enable citizens to make applications for those jobs directly and simply. Development of an online scheduling system that will help systems make, change, and cancel appointments when dealing with government agencies. And the development of a national ICT plan. So, along a varied list of some very helpful and innovative solutions. I'm sure members will want to know how advanced are we with them, which ones have been completed, which ones went well, which ones are stuck, perhaps in need of recalibration, and what are the hurdles to overcome. And I would like to hear at some point, where are we with the national ICT plan? Are we hoping to be like Singapore, smart nation, smart state, where the ICT sector is the key enabler for almost every business industry, where ICT enhances country competitiveness by transforming the business processes? Is our goal to be a smart nation, where government, business, and citizens interact seamlessly and use technology to work more efficiently and effectively? So I'm sure we want to hear about the infrastructure, how solid it is, what's the ultimate game plan? And I will come back to you with some other questions, but let me open the floor now to members.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me add my welcome with my other colleagues and the chairman to your entire team. Without having to repeat much, I agree with the chairman, and I think you all would be in consonance with that, and this is a very important aspect of our country's development. I'm going to be asking some questions based on your Trinidad and Tobago National ICT Plan 2018-2022. in which you identified 5 strategic thrusts. Number 1, improving connectivity. Secondly, improving human capacity. Thirdly, the digital government. Fourthly, fostering economic development. And fifthly, advancing the environment for societal benefit. I listened to the acting permanent secretary, and he said that he was pleased with what was taking place at iGovTT. I want to ask the question to you as chairman on the CU, whoever will like to start the ball rolling. While the PS might be pleased, are you satisfied after 3 years of your national ICT plan that you are where you would like to be? Are you satisfied with the impact that you are creating based on your 5 strategic imperatives that you have identified here? And then I'll follow some questions.
Thank you very much for the question. I would start and I would ask that the CEO continues for anything that I might leave out. So I would give you a very broad answer in the sense that, as always, we at iGov always, sorry, excuse me, we are attempting to look at successive refinement. Sorry. So in that sort of philosophy, we are never entirely happy with where we are. We always strive for improvements. We always think we can do better. With that said, there are many things that are underway at present that the CEO can allude to that we think have the potential to be transformative. And where several of them, thank you very much, where several of them are at the moment, the ultimate impact would be derived upon the full deployment. And we are actively pushing to have some of these things available to the benefit of government and citizenry.
So if you're transferring the questions to the CEO, I want to ask him now directly. What percentage of completion you would have acquired or achievement based on your 5 strategic trusts, if you were to give me each of them? Because you would have set targets. You must set targets, and you can tell us what percentage of each of those would you have accomplished after 3 years of your 5-year plan?
Thanks for the question, member. Promise is not a virus. I just wanted to, if you'd allow me, member, to just put some additional context around the National ICT Plan. The National ICT Plan, as its name suggests, it's a national plan, and it is a plan that was developed with our support, our contribution as iGovTT, in conjunction with the Ministry of Public Admin. As a company, we would have developed in circa 2017 a strategic plan, and this strategic plan, 2017-2018, was meant to align with elements of the National ICT Plan that would fall under the purview of iGovTT. In other words, we are charged with following the policy direction of the ministry, of our ministry, and we work very closely with them. And we are closely tied to our original mandate as outlined in the cabinet decision, which speaks to the physical infrastructure, the foundational services, the capacity building, supporting legislation, etc. I'm going to answer you directly. If we were to look at the first item in the strategic plan, improving connectivity, that speaks directly to the government backbone and our infrastructure that provides connectivity, digital services, WAN connectivity, LAN connectivity, as the chairman would have alluded to earlier, in a secure manner to ministries, departments, and agencies. That piece of infrastructure was established around 2009, 2010, thereabouts. And as at January 2019, we embarked upon a full-blown refresh of the infrastructure so that it will enable the modernization trust of the Ministry of Public Admin. We expect that specific initiative to be completed in June 2020. We originally anticipated a completion at the end of March, but we have had some difficulties with regard to the suppliers and bringing down equipment. We are essentially doing a refresh of the entire infrastructure to provide for enhanced security, improved bandwidth, some additional more modern functionality, like what for those of us who have experience in the private sector would have grown accustomed to, the Skype type functionality. We feel that it is important to bring these things into our environment to facilitate or to reduce the friction of doing business, both at the ministry as well as for citizens seeking services. So I would say that activity is, I would say, 70%, 80% complete as it relates to the first pillar. In terms of increasing human capacity, this is a difficult one for me to put a number to. One of the things we would have indicated earlier on was the hackathon, HackTT. HackTT was a CSR initiative by iGovTT meant to encourage and engender and encourage to move our country away from being a download culture to upload culture. Everybody walks around with a cell phone and we are constantly downloading other people's content. So we identified all the tertiary level institutions in the country and invited them to participate to solve specific problems. The result of that was, in the first instance, 3 solutions, real solutions that exist in the public sector that we could actually use to solve problems that our citizens face on a daily basis.
How many institutions, if you could tell us the names, and how many persons would have participated?
I will start with the latter. We had 110 students participating, and we had all the major tertiary institutions. Perhaps I can respond to that in writing, member. But what I can say, all the major tertiary institutions participated.
And what is the consequence or the outcome of that?
The outcome of that is that right now, members of the iGov team is in talks with the Ministry of Labor to deploy one of the solutions, the Employ TT solutions. Everybody in the room is probably familiar with Caribbean Jobs. We are building one of those for the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. We have onboarded 5 of the students who participated in that hackathon at iGovTT, and they are actively moving the solution from being in a beta stage to a production-ready stage so that it could be launched and made available to citizens.
Let me just get on to a little specific here now. You talk about data security and so on, and hackathon, and all these things are very worthwhile. But has there been a situation where at all, if you can give me some specific, where ministries or state agencies have been without basic antivirus protection? And if it is, and for what period of time that would have happened, and whether government data, including citizens' data, as a result of that, if it existed, have been at risk for malware or hacking or ransomware or viruses. If you can tell us whether there was any period at all where government data, where you had this exposure because of the absence of antivirus protection.
Several. I would like to detail it. I would just ask for one thing. Some of the aspects based on the nature of security, we would prefer to respond in writing if that's okay, or in another format. I don't know if that's okay.
Well, that's perfectly okay. And I too want to echo Member Karim's question, because one of the things that we have an interest in knowing is how vulnerable are we to cyber attacks? And what do we need to have in place to mitigate against citizens being compromised?
So, without giving the full details, if you want to give us that in writing, but I want to repeat the question, maybe this part of the question. Has there been any period, and if so, for how long, have we had no basic antivirus protection for data for which ministries and state agencies are responsible?
In terms of the specific times or periods, I would have to get back to you on that with the specifics, but I can say that there were challenges at times with respect to ensuring that there was full coverage. And one of the reasons for this would be one of the challenges that is already faced by many enterprises, which is that of maintaining aging infrastructure, maintaining aging software in light of various economic challenges.
I understand what you're
Yes.
saying, but I just want to add for the record for us.
Yes.
Because we will have to present this at some other time.
We can provide you with full details.
Are you saying that there has been a period that we were exposed, we did not have antivirus protection for government ministries and state agencies?
I would answer that by classing government. There are two types of government ministries, divisions, and agencies. Those that subscribe to certain services and those that do not.
But were they ever exposed? The question I'm getting at, has there been a period where there was exposure that we did not have the antivirus protection for any of these entities?
To the best of my knowledge at present, those who subscribed would not have been in that bucket, but those who didn't might fall into it, and those would be based upon what is reported to us in that regard or is in the public domain.
So with respect to the reports that you may have gotten in the public domain, would you say that there were any or there were none of these ministries or agencies that did not have, that they were without basic antivirus protection?
I would.
Is that yes or no
Yeah,
question?
I'm not being guarded or
No,
cautious. I can just tell you that for the period of time that I have been there, that we have been there at the company, that several reports would have coming to us, and as I said, the details of those I would prefer to provide in writing, because those specific instances were based upon issues outside of the services that we provide.
Okay, but I don't need the specific
Yes.
details. All I need you to tell me is whether there was that period of exposure. And I'm asking this question again.
Yes, so yes, I would
Yes
say
is
that
the
there
answer.
would have been.
Right. Okay, so now I want to go to Microsoft Office 365. And if you could give us a sense, because the chairman alluded to Singapore, and I want to ask it in two contexts. Number one, there was some relationship with a Singapore agency with respect to the Ministry of Public Administration to provide certain consultancy services. Is that correct? If it is correct, what were those services? And have those services under any agreement continued, or have they been discontinued?
To the best of my knowledge, those services are currently not in effect.
Okay. Can you recall the name, and this is public too, can you recall the name of the agency from Singapore with whom the Ministry of Public Administration would have had a relationship for the benefit of our ICT infrastructure in Trinidad and Tobago?
I cannot recall the specific name of the agency, but it would be within some of our documentation.
Might a name IDAI International
sounds familiar? Yes.
Familiar. Okay. Based on what we want to do, as the chairman indicated, in terms of Singapore, and I understand Singapore a little bit, and I understand Singapore ONE. Has any of you within this period of time from 2015 to now visited any entity or Singapore itself to see what they're doing that we could have benefited from?
I would direct that to the CEO.
Okay.
Yes, member. I had the privilege of being part of a Caribbean delegation that visited Estonia to take a look at their implementation, their governance models, what they would have implemented to gauge an appreciation of their experience with regard to ICT and their evolution following on from the Soviet occupation, which ended around 1992.
Ask him about Singapore, but since here is Estonia, that's all right. I will ask you about Estonia now. What did your visit encourage you to bring to Trinidad and Tobago based on the Estonian model, and particularly with respect to the Ministry of Education and Learning?
Lots, member. I'll try to be brief. Two, what was very apparent from the visit to Estonia was the importance associated with the governance of enterprise IT. It is akin to having, the lack of governance is akin, and I'm trying to give an analogy here, is akin to having a car with a fantastic engine. You have tires, and I dare say, ready to move the car along on the road, which is, for example, the executing agency. But there's a lack. Without a transmission, you can't convert that power into movement. And Estonia, they had clear governance mechanisms which allowed for the policy intent of the government to be translated all the way down into the execution activities as it relates to IT.
Chairman, just one final, before I...
But, so am I hearing that you are saying that there's a need for some sort of better governance structure, whether in terms of legislation or otherwise?
I am. And I'm speaking specifically to the discipline of GUIDE, which is governance of enterprise IT. And to that end, again, in conjunction with the ministry, what we have been doing is looking at the existing governance arrangements. One of them is the Government Information System Leadership and Advisory Council, to strengthen that with a view towards promoting or improving the way that as a complete government we are able to deliver.
I just want to thank you. All right. I know we didn't get to Singapore, but I'll come back to that. In my second rounds, I want to ask questions with respect to services like ConnectTT, TT Connect and GovNet and so on, but I'll come to that. The one question I want to complete with my first round is, I'm looking at your financial performance review for the past 5 years in a tabular form, 61. And the operating cost has Microsoft, and it details expenditure from 2015 on to 2019. But I noticed that in 2017, you had a minus position of $6.45 million. What is the position with respect to the Microsoft contract, which I understand that iGovTT will have a relationship with? And again, have these things been rolled out effectively and efficiently, or was there a period where, for the lack of this facility, or if there was, that you had duplication by ministries expending sums of money? So I want to know, what was the Microsoft One project, what was the cost involved, and whether in fact there were duplication by other ministries and agencies as a result of the non-implementation of Microsoft One.
No. Sorry. Remember, now I'm going to answer the second part first. I'm not that familiar with the 2017 period, but I can provide the information, and we have support here who might be able to bring that institutional knowledge to bear. I will say, however, that definitely one of the challenges that we're working on, and again, by looking to enhance the governance arrangements that exist for IT, is this whole notion of license management across the environment to ensure that the licensing arrangements are optimal, and that, just as you indicated, ministries are not, in the IT world, before I came into the public sector, I was in the private, and we used to talk about shadow IT. And what you have, in the absence of strong governance, you will have instances where, rather than participate, for example, in enterprise shared service for licensing, there are instances and where ministries or lines of business will go out and acquire licenses and not necessarily benefit from the economies of scale associated.
But for this purpose of implementation that you are responsible for with respect to Microsoft, the licenses, are you satisfied that this has been properly adhered to, or are ministries and state agencies duplicating the cost of what you would have paid for as the executing agency for the government?
I would say that it's in two directions. In the one instance, and I refer again to your previous question, there are those who do and those who don't. The CEO would have spoken about governance and the need to strengthen governance. And in the absence of, I would say optimal, but I'm talking about the improvement of the existing arrangement as we move forward. In the absence of that optimal for the time governance arrangement, then you would find cases where there would be duplication of effort.
Do we have a situation, in my view, that is very untenable, where you have iGovTT reporting to the Ministry of Public Administration, which is the ministry responsible for this backbone, and other ministries and agencies are doing things that are in their own domain? They're not taking you on. And I listened to the CEO just now, and he was calling for more alignment. Do you think that there is misalignment or lack of alignment, or there should be more alignment? Because after all, we are looking at the taxpayers' dollars here in this, and I want to get a specific answer from you with respect to the question I'm asking, in terms of you being the executing agency for the Ministry of Public Administration, because people listening and looking on to this going live may say that you have no teeth, because people do what they want. So where are we heading as a country?
Okay, so with respect to that question, to answer that, I want to clarify the role of iGov within the national ICT sphere. The iGov is called the executing arm, yes. But if you look at the current construction and the makeup of the company, it speaks more to a supportive role in many respects. And I want to say that to note that there are many instances whereby we are able to support those who need the support, assist the ministry in providing an environment whereby those who can do, as long as they are within a particular range of standards and so on. And this again speaks to the governance. So yes, there is going to be some level of misalignment in that regard. So I would say that it's not so much that we don't have teeth. It's that we are trying to have closer alignment, especially given the environment that we currently operate in.
Let me just say all my questions are developmental.
Yes.
It's not meant to be denigrated in any way.
Agreed.
Before I pass the mic to Brigadier, what I gathered CEO Henry was alluding to is that when you have license agreements, you're bound within the corners of those license agreements. And so it may be necessary that to get optimum use of those license agreements, you may have to bespoke them, negotiate perhaps with the providers. So is that what you were alluding to and where we need to be going?
That is exactly what I was alluding to and where we need to be going. We have embarked in the company upon an initiative whereby we can have more data-driven decision-making. So as an example, many of these licenses, let's say as an example, may sit on machines that may or may not be used in the way that you would like them to be used, for example. But we don't speak directly to some of those things, but we'd like to understand better the types of usage. And this is something that happens not only with respect to you give the example of Microsoft, but for any sort of enterprise type solutions, we're looking at a shared services architecture whereby ministries, divisions, and agencies can achieve economies of scale. It does require them to subscribe to these services, and we understand that over the years there might have been challenges, for instance, with infrastructure and software, as expected as time elapses with aging infrastructure. And many of the initiatives we have are geared towards addressing those. But and so I appreciate that suggestion, and that is exactly where I was alluding to.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add to the point, we in our role as a support agency, executing agency, and in an attempt to get some teeth, we have been working very closely with the ministry. And the ministry, hand in hand with us, have been, for want of a better word, evangelizing that message. And that is at one level, to educate leadership, the executive across ministries, about the importance of capitalizing or leveraging the existing enterprise software agreements that exist so that we could reduce the total cost of ownership to operate our software as a government. And that is at one level. So we're talking moral suasion that is happening even as we sit here. On the other layer, I kind of alluded to the governance arrangement surrounding the government advisory, the IT Leadership and Advisory Council. And inside of there, we are also mandating through some specific committees that would have been established to identify how we are to go about the business of the use of IT as it relates to government. The third layer, which I know, and I don't know if the PS will permit me, is that I know the ministry is working to go with other ministries to go to a higher level, a level probably above my pay grade, to institute or to develop regulations with teeth to enforce what the chairman and what the member was kind of alluding to with the question.
Thank you. Brigadier.
Good morning once again. In your written submission, February 21st, you mentioned the process of electronic monitoring devices. And in that submission, you say for 2018, the process should have been completed on the 5th of March 2019. You said there was also a 7-month delay. Could you provide an update as to the completion of this process, the electronic monitoring devices, on behalf of the Ministry of National Security?
I would pass it to the CEO.
Member, I kind of blanked out there for a second. Do you mind repeating the question, member? Through the chair.
Yes, in your submission on the 21st of February 2020, it is noted that regarding the electronic monitoring devices, 2018, but 2017, 2018, the Ministry of National Security requested that iGovTT provide procurement services to obtain a suitable provider for a turnkey solution. And in your submission, you said that the completion date should have been the 5th of March 2019, and you said scheduled performance, there was a 7-month delay. I'm asking if you can update us as to the status of this project.
To the best of my awareness, member, this project, our role in terms of the procurement that has been completed, I can provide some details of the actual implementation at the various stages to the committee, if you so wish. But I know it has been completed.
So your role, as far as you're concerned, your role is completed?
From the procurement,
procurement
yes, to the best of my awareness. But I can confirm that by going through my PMO to get the specific project records.
All right, so is there any future role for iGovTT in this process, on this project, now once that the procurement is finished, given the fact that you are virtually the IT experts for the government of Trinidad?
We hope there is, member. We always present ourselves as ready, willing, and able to participate in implementations, both if it is at the initiation or the procurement stage. From a contract management perspective, we also provide that kind of assistance. So we are ready and willing. I know the team has been in contact with the ministry. So I see that, yes, potentially we can play a role in similar initiatives, and if it is that we need to extend this, this specific project.
Could you provide us in writing the provider that you have procured for the Ministry of National Security in terms of this electronic monitoring devices?
Certainly, member.
And also, if any type of pilot project was put in place, as the case may be. Could you bring us up to date in this process? That is what we would like to.
Yes, certainly.
In terms of the
Dr. Henry?
Yes, morning again, everyone. I've been involved in ICT and development and stuff like digital divide and so on for over 20 years. So please understand my question in the right context, okay? In order to get a lot of what you need to get done, as the PS alluded to, that you have to interface with telecom and internet service providers. What are your main challenges in doing that? How do you make recommendations as to what we need based on your experience? I don't want to pin something on you that you're not responsible for. Get the gist of it?
I can speak from the perspective of the company, and I would leave other members to respond from their perspectives if further clarification is needed. Because of where we sit, yes, we do engage in discussion from time to time with respect to improvements as it relates to delivering on our mandate. As an example, the current GovNet refresh. The current GovNet refresh focuses on enhancing the backbone infrastructure through which ministries, divisions, and agencies would be able to have access to those shared services that can be used to deliver more complex solutions without having to worry about those core services. And the CEO would have given a little bit more detail of that, and some more detail would have been provided in the written submission. So that particular initiative is one whereby we would have worked in tandem with the line ministry as well as service provider stakeholders to come up with a workable solution given the nature of the infrastructure and given the context within which we operate, the economic landscape as well as the rate at which technology is advancing, in order to come up with something that we believe would be ultimately of benefit to ministries, divisions, and agencies, as well as to the citizenry.
Let me interrupt. So in order to get to the level of Estonia, as the CEO had his experience with, you need coordination of several agencies. No one agency could do it all by itself. So that's the point I'm making in terms of the interaction, the interface between yourselves, Telecom Authority, and so on. Does that happen, or it's just you exist in a separate silo and also in terms of recommendations of policies, for example, in order for us to reach anywhere, we need fairly low broadband cost, right? Do you recommend things in that nature? And also, it's not just about the technical part of the computers and so on, but also the educational aspect of it, of getting people tech savvy. There are lots of people in this country who are afraid to use an online bank account still. Those type of challenges. Apart from the technical challenges of ICT costs and broadband access and so on, right? That is some of the bigger picture I want to get. Your role in that, or do you have any role in that?
Yes, so excellent question. We do engage in dialogue from time to time with various stakeholders, like I said, specifically with respect to the Telecoms Authority, we are guided again by the ministry under whom we operate, so as is the Telecoms Authority. And as needed, we can work on initiatives together. During my tenure, or my experience at the time, in other capacities, I have worked with them on other things, not necessarily wearing the hat of this company. What we have done, I believe it was at the end of 2018, is we organized a symposium whereby there could be a meeting of the heads, a meeting of the minds, to discuss issues such as these. And what we used that to do is to get the ball rolling again as it relates to some of these things that you have alluded to, because as you also said, technology is one aspect, but to us we recognize that people, culture, and processes are probably the most difficult things to realize many of these things. So we have done things with respect to addressing that, and one thing we are also more aggressively looking at is more public awareness outside of the usual public sector type discussions and fora that the CEO would have alluded to increasingly encourage citizens to understand some of these things.
Last part, and for the CEO, you visited Estonia. I've been following Estonia since the 90s, okay? To sum it up, on a scale of 1 to 10, how far are we from Estonia?
Thanks for the question, member. That is not a gotcha question. I think we have a ways to go to get to the level of Estonia, if I have to be frank.
Please do, because we need a reality
yes,
check. That's the point of my question. Yeah.
I think in order to get to that state where we have the interoperability, the integration, the movement of data using that the famous X-Road model, which is really a service-oriented architecture and approach to sharing data. I think it has to start with the appropriate governance arrangements. We do have, in my view, a good start because we have an authority for IT in the country, which is the Ministry of Public Administration, which is a good thing. As early as 2009, the country would have embarked upon the establishment of this agency. And this agency was mandated to provide foundational services.
Promise not to judge my question. Yeah.
I'm not. I'm being frank. The intention of the agency was to create an environment that would lead to a situation such as Estonia or Singapore. So we had the infrastructure, the associated resources. I think we had the people, we had the technology. But I'm not sure if the required processes was in place, because without that, we would not easily get to the Estonia state. That being said, and I'm not dodging the question, I think what I have been observing around the environment is a trending in that direction. What we are seeing, systems tend to grow in an organic way. We will be fooling ourselves if we feel that we could bring an expert into the country and in 1 year we move from 20% to 80% readiness. So I think while we do have a long ways to go, I think, for example, the work that you're seeing in the ministries, for example, the ministry at the Attorney General's office, the work that they're doing there, the civil registry, the land registry, some of the work I'm seeing at the Ministry of Works, augurs well for us, but it will not come together, it will not be accelerated if we don't get our act together as it relates to organizing ourselves for delivery.
Let me be clear, I'm not blaming you, I just want to get a realistic picture, okay?
And remember, the thing is, I take it personally because I live here. And when I travel, I get the benefit of IT. And I feel that it is our responsibility to make the environment better. And the way that we at iGov try to do it is through the use of our skills in the use of technology to make the life of people better.
Okay, so 1 to 10.
I would say 5.
I could accept that, but I think that's a little bit generous, but we'll work with that.
Before I pass to Member Mark, I have a couple of questions, because when you were speaking earlier, you mentioned the increasing of human capacity, and then Chairman Rock talked about people, processes, and culture, and the environment. So the backdrop to my question is, I see iGov as very strategically important for our national development, and people, the environment, human capacity is key. So having said that, lots of talented people at your company, you're doing cutting edge and exciting work. So how do you explain 4 resignations from top management over the past 2 years?
I would, in terms of that, resignations from top management, that is something that speaks, one, to direction, and in particular, in certain aspects of the company, and I'd give you a little bit of history. Over the last few years, when we were charged with the responsibility in the past, one of the things that we would have tried to do during our tenure is to strengthen internal capacity. In doing so, we would have had to embark upon aspects that also need to be balanced by the current economic landscape. So that would involve making sure that we don't have square pegs and round holes, in essence. In some of those instances, I would say there would have been differences in that regard, and that would probably be the predominant factor. I can't speak to details of why they themselves might fully leave, as you mentioned, resignations, but in terms of that, knowing the positions, that would have been where I would place it myself.
Okay, thanks. So, well, what I'm also driving at is this. ICT is supposed to be one of the pillars of diversification, right? And it requires, I would think, the best human capital. Are we seeking out, are we attracting, are we retaining the best talent? Or we just paying lip service to this? Because I really want to know, if we're going to help you be your best self, how do we get this talent? That's where I'm going to.
Not a problem. So, for example, that is, the HR aspects are very important. At present, one of the other factors, as you mentioned it in that respect, would relate to the fact that in looking at staff costs, we currently have members who are working under the current CPO approved structure, which would have been pretty dated. Now, as you know, ICT technologists and the types of key personnel you need, if you want to get the creme de la creme, then you need to pay for what you want. So that, of course, remains a challenge, particularly within the operating environment of, I would dare say, any state enterprise. With that said, one of the things we have tried to do in terms of a strategy is try to create that sort of nationalist type approach, that sort of let's try to do things to the benefit of the country approach. And this is where, for instance, a lot of the HR strategies that we've adopted in terms of the staff have been focused, as well as in terms of initiatives such as HackTT, where we involve ourselves with stakeholders, because I think sitting down and not really achieving what we need to achieve, or leaving the car without the transmission, as the CEO said, is an untenable situation. So definitely.
So I want to go in 2 directions. One is great pay, because if you're going to be attracting the best talent, you can make all the nationalist appeals you want, But if you're pulling in the top scholarship winners and you have very experienced and knowledgeable human capital, they can likely earn 3 times what they're earning at iGov abroad. So how do we come up with ways and means to hold on to these guys? And then the second thing I want to talk about is the actual work environment. Are you a growth mindset? Are you a hive type activity? Or are you bureaucratic in your nature that could frustrate, these creative, talented guys?
Several things. One, in terms of one approach in terms of talent development, as you alluded to, I would say that we are currently embarking on that. For example, the use of some of the HackTT awardees to develop the projects. In talks with them, one of the things that they desired is to be able to contribute more to the national ICT development. So that is something we are doing in partnership not only with iGov, as well as the private sector, some of the mentors, etc., from the private sector. But these students or these graduates actually get to see things done, and that to them, they say, it's really fulfilling from that side. So that is something we would like to see more of. So this is really our first foray into that aspect. Again, we try things and see how they work, and we tweak to suit. That's the big picture with respect to that.
Now remember, we are here to help you.
Yes.
So if you would like to make a plug to the powers that be and to the national community, that for you to do your best and for our best and brightest to flourish, they need to be well paid and they need to be motivated. As I said, we need to have this growth mindset on technology if we're going to get these groundbreaking solutions. What are your needs in that regard?
One of the things that we need, well, the obvious would be on the financial side. The other thing that we would really need, it relates to generally, as the CEO would have alluded to, opportunities to engage with client ministries to encourage digital transformation. As the CEO would have alluded to, the current strategy we use is one generally of being an advisor and sort of a softer approach, and he would have alluded to some things that would have been underway as relates to a slightly harder approach. I think that some of those things would be welcome, especially given one of the previous members' questions raised as it relates to governance or conformance. So finance, opportunities to work on more e-services in partnership with client ministries, because that's what we do. We are a supportive agency, but without the inputs, we try to scan the environment, produce things, and push them out ourselves, but the real value and the transformation happens as we onboard more from outside as opposed to what derives from in.
Thank you. I'm going to come back on this point, but Member Mark.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I wanted to ask the Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Public Administration the following question. Is there a cabinet-approved ICT policy that all agencies must adhere to? And if yes, what is being done to implement this policy? I also would like you to clarify, how does the ministry adhere or ensure adherence to this ICT policy? And what sanctions, if any, are there for non-adherence to the ICT policy?
Thank you, Member. I cannot say specifically or reference a particular cabinet decision regarding the ministry's role with respect to ICT policies for the public service. But I'm sure that there are, because as a ministry with responsibility for ICT across the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, we do have an oversight role. I can reference to the Auditor General's report from 2017, where the Auditor General in his report did make reference to certain shortcomings with respect to ICT policies and the need for ICT strategic plans and other methods and measures to ensure, as you pointed out, compliance, to ensure proper spend value for money with respect to the ICT services, ICT expenditure within the public service. Since the issuance of that Auditor General's report, the ministry has actually appeared before the PAAC to address those issues, and we have taken the Auditor General's report and, of course, the recommendations, questions by the PAAC to heart to fill the lacuna that exists right now with respect to ICT policy and making sure that there's tighter alignment and better ICT governance within the public service. So, for example, we have noted, and the Auditor General did note, that there is limited extent to which we can track expenditure on ICT. So we have had conversations reaching out to the Ministry of Planning and Development, for example, to ensure that as ministries and departments put forward their PSIP, their capital development projects for upcoming fiscal years, that the Ministry of Public Administration will play a critical role in that. In other words, before a ministry or department makes a submissions for its PSIP, those project proposals must come to the Ministry of Public Administration. We'll be checking one to ensure, and both CEO and Chair reference that, to ensure that there's no duplication. So, for example, if an entity is proposing the purchase of a software application that already exists via the enterprise agreement, or that is housed in a particular ministry that can serve the wider public service, that may not be approved, right? We want to ensure that there is a greater effort towards ICT expenditure that benefits service delivery, or as we put it, the government to citizen capacity. Sometimes we've had instances when we've done our own tracking of expenditure that a lot of the ICT expenditure thus far is geared towards maybe internal operations. So you purchase software, you purchase hardware, and that is important because there might be better software out there, hardware might be coming to end of life, or because of an increase in staffing or whatever, you may need to increase hardware and software purchases. But how much of the ICT expenditure is really geared towards improving public service delivery?
Yeah. Well, what I'm trying to clarify is this. Can you provide this committee with a hard copy of a cabinet-approved ICT policy? Can you provide this committee with such a policy that has been approved by the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago?
Member Mark, I can inquire, and once that is available, I will make it available.
No. Look, we are talking about the Ministry of Public Administration, which has an overarching responsibility for driving ICT technology, and you have a company that has been set up specifically to fuel this particular arrangement. You are here as acting permanent secretary. We have the CEO of this company here today. Could we not get from either the CEO or from your good self whether there is, in fact, a concrete policy document that has been approved by the cabinet on information and communications technology in the Republic of TNT? It's as straight and as simple as that. It is either yes, we have such a policy, no, we don't have such a policy, or we are working on such a policy? Please, clarify for us.
Member Mark, the clear and definitive answer to the question would be no, we do not. Again, referencing the Auditor General's report, that was identified as a shortcoming, and we will be embarking on developing a definitive policy. As I mentioned in the earlier part of my response, there are measures that we have been taking with, for example, the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Planning to address certain issues, but there is no definite policy, and that needs to be addressed.
But somewhere I read where you have an ICT national plan, not so? How can you have a plan for ICT to roll out into different ministries if the overarching policy framework that would inform such plans has not been formulated, has not been given, I should say, cabinet approval? How is the Ministry of Public Administration and this company that is responsible for driving this ICT policy and rolling it out, how can this take place in the absence of a policy? Do you not agree with me that that is a basis or an ingredient for some degree of misalignment and to some extent confusion within ministries, between ministries, agencies, government departments, and you have a lot of, confusion generated thereby? Could you clarify for us?
I totally agree that there is a need for an ICT policy for the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and that such a policy document, statement, position would speak to the whole issue of ICT governance that both CEO and Chair have referenced thus far. An ICT policy for GOT would speak to issues of utilization of enterprise-wide software applications, issues relating to expenditure, what is approved, what should not be approved, capacity building, for example. But I might want to say that a policy for ICT within government is somewhat different from a national ICT plan, right? The national ICT plan speaks to, among other things, what is Trinidad and Tobago's vision as a country, not just for ICT, but how do we utilize the power and capability of ICT to take us where we wish to go? So, for example, the National ICT Plan, which is approved by Cabinet, is really one that supports Vision 2030. There are many other things that would support Vision 2030, but an ICT plan is one that does. And of course, just to reference the ICT plan, the ICT plan speaks to empowered people, citizens, competitive business, and transformational government. Certainly, as we try to create a transformational government, and even the other parts, there will be elements where an ICT policy for GOT comes into play. So I will not disagree as to the need for an ICT policy for GOT today. It should have been there yesterday and the day before, and that is something that we have to address with alacrity, but there is a distinction between the policy and the plan.
Can we get from you and your team a time frame for submission of an ICT policy for Cabinet's approval? Is there a time frame that you can provide to this committee?
Admittedly, members, the only time frame that comes to mind right now is as soon as possible, because admittedly that, while it would be driven and engineered by the Ministry of Public Administration and iGov, for example, it wouldn't involve other public service entities. that is really something for collaboration point of views. But I can give the assurance that we would definitely want to start it. March has just started, so it's a good time to start marching.
Mr. Chairman, let me just ask Mr. Kirk Henry a question. Delivery of services, efficient services at an affordable cost to the citizenry is critically important in this developmental thrust and the so-called digitalization of government. I wanted to ask, as a specific example, how far have we gotten as it relates to e-passports, as it relates to getting this electronic drive where people can access passports, because we know what is taking place right now with passports. People taking months to get a passport in TNT. How is your company, along with the ministry, addressing this question about efficiency and using ICT to deal with online technology, re-accessing passports in TNT within a week or 7 or 10 days? Where are we with this thrust, as an example?
Thanks for that question, member. Currently, iGovTT is not working specifically to implement an e-passport type solution. That is the frank and straight answer. However, the other part of your question, as relates to service delivery and efficiency, what we are doing is coming back to our mandate about foundational services. We are strengthening the underlying infrastructure so that when a ministry or a department is in a position to execute on a business project, and it may be to do an end-to-end service for passport delivery, for example, we would have the prerequisite infrastructure in place to support it. Now, that is the defensive action we are taking. From an offensive perspective, what we are doing is actively looking for opportunities to create solutions that we feel could serve as a shared services and be made available in general to ministries, with the intention of making life easier for our citizens. And let me explain. I have told the management team and our team members at iGovTT that if we come up with a solution, given where we are in our maturity in terms of the use of IT, chances are we could find a use case for it. So just kind of linking your question and what the chairman asked, we are encouraging our young people, our developers, our graduates, to bring the solutions, the innovative solutions, and we will find a way to deploy, to implement, to make a difference. So that is...
On that point, I'm interested in knowing, have you developed any apps, any computer software, any computer programs? And if so, what, if anything, has been done in terms of IP protection and the exploitation of that IP?
I am not a lawyer like your good self, but what I would say is we have done some development. The contract of employment associated with employees at the company, that IP remains resident and is owned by the company. If you recall, I would have mentioned the hackathon that we put on. At that hackathon, we actually created 3 solutions, 3 applications built by locals. We didn't buy it, we didn't pay, we didn't send any Forex outside the country to get it. One was EmployTT. EmployTT is an application a responsive web application that allows citizens to go and access, just as you would for monster jobs or Caribbean jobs, that jobs that the government of the Republic of Trinidad wants to advertise. That is at a stage where our local students are building it, finishing it out, polishing it to put it into production. The second one was a scheduler, and coming back to Member Mark's question, we are currently in talks with the people across at immigration with regard to using our e-appointment system. It's a system which we see as a shared service that multiple ministries could access so that a citizen could go online and book an appointment to see an officer to access a service. And what that does, it gives greater transparency to the performance of the underlying ministry, because from that you could glean data analytics. You could see how long an appointment takes to be completed. Where is it in the approval process and things like that. The third solution that we developed was and it is not in an advanced stage as if the former two, is what we call our TT commute. Students, locals of Trinidad and Tobago, developed a solution that would allow, for example, consider this use case as a tourist walking out, coming out, and using an application that will allow them to navigate across the country, both Trinidad and Tobago. It will tell them, if you're in Port of Spain and you need to get to Sangre Grande, you can take a PTSC bus, you can take a taxi, you can take a maxi taxi, and it will calculate the cost, the time, etc. Those are three solutions that our students coming out of our tertiary institutions develop. We have recently implemented a chatbot facility and a live chat facility for government. What it does, it allows a citizen to go onto a website or through your mobile device and connect with one of my CSRs at TT Connect to request the information, to get an information on a service, etc., from the comfort of your home or your laptop. And if you're unable to make the request during regular business hours and you do it at night, we have implemented chatbots which would respond in an automated fashion to requests. So these are just a small bit of some of the things. I don't know if you'd allow me some more time, I can give you some more examples.
No, but what you're saying is very reassuring, and I anticipated that there would be a lot of creativity and development of that type at iGov. From an IP lawyer's perspective, though, there must be some kind of payoff for the people who develop and create the app. You must be able to ring fence that IP. And even if you're going to license it back to the government at a nominal fee, there is a possibility for iGov, through proper exploitation of that IP, to be generating some very, very important cash. It could be a very profitable enterprise. So I'm hoping that you're having the right advice from an IP point of view, and that you are conducting IP inventories, and that you're being able to put a value to these different applications and programs that you're developing.
Yes, Chairman, we I take that advice. We do have in-house counsel and supported by external, because what really is happening for us, if you look at our annual report, we consider this period to be a renaissance of sorts for the company, where we are moving away from just sitting and consuming, and we want to be suppliers of content, whether it's solutions, services, but we are actively going out there. And I just wanted to add one other thing in response to what you mentioned earlier about the human capital. We are focused on creating an environment that is not typical of the public sector and the bureaucracy. We are focused, I always tell the team, slavishly follow everything in our Bible, which is the State Enterprise Performance and Monitoring Manual, follow all legislation, follow all company policy, but within there you have the latitude to create and build. And we encourage our young people to do that. Just a couple of weeks ago...
That's like the Google model.
That's exactly, we do a lot of cross-functional teams. We encourage people to use what they would have learned usually in the university, and I am a proud University of the West Indies past student, and we want to show that we have the ability to create, and that is what we are doing across at iGov.
Member Cummings.
Thank you, Chairman. CEO, the community access centers, what's the situation with that? Do they still exist? Have you expanded? I see that in 2015 there were initially 4. What's the position with those?
Yes, they exist. The 4, I believe 4 is still in existence, and I will rely on my colleagues at MPA just to confirm. But I'm proud or happy to report that we are actually supporting an initiative being led by the Ministry of Public Admin with regard to the rollout of some additional community access centers. So I don't know if...
Remember, we have currently 5 community ICT access centers in operation. We have at Todd's Road, Marak, I believe it's Kumana, and Pinal.
For the benefit of the public, could you just briefly outline the role of these centers?
The community ICT access centers are essentially an effort to bring ICT to what we call the underserved communities. Those communities, Trinidad and Tobago is a small country, but those people who are off the beaten track, right, in the periphery, where it may not currently be feasible for some of the, let us say, the internet service providers, the ISPs, to bring internet services, to bring Wi-Fi to those communities. Maybe they, because of poverty or other issues, they do not have access to computers and devices whereby they could access the internet at their homes. So the access centers, and the name is fitting, ICT access centers, really provides that opportunity to bring 21st century ICT within the communities where they are non-existent at present. So what is available in the centers, certainly internet access to citizens. The centers basically serve as an internet cafe within the communities so citizens can access the internet. They are provided training in basic ICT, for example, computer literacy. They may be exposed to some of the basic software applications, whether it's the Microsoft Office. There are some business services that might be provided if someone wanted maybe a document printed, copied, that is provided. Essentially, we hope that through the ICT access centers, it will serve as a means of promoting that human capacity development in the remote areas. There's also the opportunity for entrepreneurial development, because as people go out and they serve the net, they can see business opportunities, they can put their businesses online. They may have a small catering or construction company. It can be put up online via the various media.
Thank you, PS. Well, in terms of utilization of these centers, what feedback do you have?
We routinely, that is basically on a monthly basis, we get feedback from all the centers in terms of the human traffic, but let me not use that word. In terms of the number of persons coming to utilize the centers, what persons came to use the centers for, I don't have that information before me, but it is safe to say that they are very well used and citizens are very appreciative of the services provided.
Thank you. The member Mark asked earlier about online applications in relation to passports. Tell me, does the trigger come from iGov? Is it ministries working in silos? Does it come from the Ministry of Public Administration? What is the source of the trigger for development of these initiatives to bring these services to the public in terms of online application for passports, ID cards, driver's permits, etc.?
Maybe I could take the opening salvo. Now, we speak about the public service sometimes as though it is a single entity, but obviously it comprises a number of ministries and departments who each operate within their own sphere and sector. and take decisions to implement their policy and their services. In providing services online and advancing the whole digital government thrust, I think the Ministry of Public Administration as the ICT ministry and its satellite iGovTT operate simultaneously as both responsive and reactive. Sorry if there's a conflict there, but there are instances where we will be scanning the environment and looking for needs that exist and try to address those. And in other instances, iGov being a consulting entity, the consultant is normally invited to provide the services. So there is a place for responding to a situation. For example, member mentioned the whole passport situation. We know it exists. I suppose there is a place for developing an application or go knocking on the door of the entity and saying, how can we assist you? But there's also the side of, I guess, waiting for the entity to come to us. So it's twofold, and maybe there's a need for more of the proactive side.
So do you think then, based on your response, that there might be a role for that trigger to come from the Ministry of Public Administration?
Definitely, yes.
And in addition to the e-passports Member Mark was speaking about, driver's permits, national ID.
Yes, Chair. I mean, for example, we note that the Ministry of Works and Transport has embarked on a major transformational effort to provide citizens with all kinds of services within that sphere online. So we definitely would need to collaborate more with our brother and sister ministries and departments to push them towards digital government.
Before I pass over to Member Karim, I just wanted to know, out of interest, is blockchain and smart contracts on your radar? And what are your views on it?
I think blockchain, if you look at the Gartner hype cycle, you would see where blockchain is. The isolation of a specific implementation that makes sense is a little bit ways off. I like to use an example, Chair. As a student of computer science, I am interested in blockchain. As it relates to the work that we need to do, I think there's some more fundamental things that we need to put in place. And the example I like to give is, I remember being at a forum and one of the participants inquired about the data analytics and BI and all these things. And the question I asked was, okay, yes, it's great, and there is a use case and there's a place for these things to augment your business. However, what are the questions you would like addressed right now? What is the state of your underlying data repository? Because if you do not have a base level of underlying infrastructure and I dare say information system maturity, you will not be able to adequately utilize these things. I am all for the use of the cutting edge or even bleeding edge, but I think it is important that we get some of the fundamentals in place so then we could move on to the more sexier items as it relates to information technology.
I take your point. I think for blockchain to work, it is all data-driven. And so you have to have proper data systems in place. But I'm just thinking that when you come up with your national ICT plan, this is something that we should be aspiring towards. Member Karim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to ask, and maybe anyone could answer it. Do you have any updated and approved ICT policies on such items as asset disposal, security policy, and cloud policy?
I'll start with the cloud policy. iGovTT in the last fiscal would have developed a paper on with respect to cloud, because our position is that it's something that we need to actively be looking at for utilization in the delivery of ICT services across our environment. I would not speak on security. I know, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I know another ministry, I think it's security, they have a TT cert outfit there, and they are paying close attention to the cybersecurity issues. That being said, however, one of the recommendations that we would have made to our parent ministry, and they are working with us, is the augmentation of the GLAC, that council which I mentioned, and one of the standing committees there would be a cybersecurity committee.
Okay, I just want to go back to my original question. Would you be able to say whether there have been any of these policies approved by the board? Asset disposal, security, and the last one I mentioned was cloud policy. Has this been submitted to the board, and have they been updated and approved? Are there these policies existing in the company then? Or also supported to the Ministry of Public Admin?
Member, just for clarification, are those policies related specifically to the company or policies for GOT?
Well, it will be both, because you will advise GOT, and you have a representative who sits on the cabinet. So I just want to know whether these policies have been produced and updated and approved.
From a GOT standpoint, as the CEO referenced, all three are currently being addressed by GLAC subcommittees.
So the answer is no?
The answer is no.
Okay.
They're in preparation.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask is, in his 2015 budget presentation, the Minister of Finance indicated that TT Connect will be separated from iGovTT. Could you give us the status of that? Has this happened?
It was separated for some time, and I believe in 2017, in 2015 it would have gone to, I believe, Ministry of Rural Development. But with that said, we maintained aspects of operational aspects during that time. In 2017, TT Connect came back into the company.
Okay.
If memory serves.
With respect to the security policy, have you ever had any requests from any agency, public or private, for the interception of any communication?
To the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay. You mentioned, I think I just want to quote the CEO, he said, the use of technology to make the lives of people better. You said that earlier on. That is commendable. Could you tell us how many TT Connect, what is happening with mobile TT Connect facilities? Are they in operation? And if they are not, why? How many mobiles would you have? I know you had mobiles. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, we have 3 mobile buses, one of which is in operation and is fairly active. It goes out to the rural communities. People make requests. Sometimes we park. We go to car parks, etc. So it is one of the 3 is in operation.
How long now the other 2 are not in operation, and why?
May I get that information and respond in writing, member?
All right. Could you give us a little sense of STAR TT centers? I don't know if you're aware of STAR TT centers. And the question really is, how many do you have? And did you have any new ones since 2015?
Member, actually the STAR TT centers are one and the same with the community ICT access centers. So initially, I think pre-2015, there would have been 4. And I think in 2019, probably June, we added the 4th, which is the Tudds Road. The plan for 2020 is to roll out a further 10.
Perspective or any proposed locations for those 10?
That can be provided, member.
Okay. And
Oh.
the last one. Since I asked a question on Singapore, and the CEO, he answered about Estonia. Have you adopted any, if you could give us a sense so the listening public will be able to compare. I don't know if you know the geography, the size of Singapore, the size of Estonia, the population of those two countries. And my question is, having visited Estonia and been so impressed, what model or models have you adopted since your visit to Estonia for Trinidad and Tobago's benefit?
I'd pass that to the CEO.
Thank you, Chairman. Remember, I have not had the pleasure to visit Singapore. I have done some reading of the literature. Estonia, however, is predicated on there's a solution which they branded X-Road. Now, X-Road is a protocol that facilitates interoperability. And it is based on what the computer science geeks might refer to as a federated model on top of a service-oriented architecture approach to service delivery. And what that means is they have gotten to the point where individual ministries act as authority for data within their individual lines of business, whether it's civil, whether it's trala. Again, to try and answer your question more directly, what we are looking at doing, what the ministry would have indicated to us, is to look at the whole notion of that data federation to facilitate that interoperability. And I like to use examples. So quickly, a quick example would be when a citizen has to go to immigration to make a request for a passport, for example. I had the experience because on a trip, I took my passport and I left it in the washing machine with some clothes, and that was it. I had to get a new one. I had to walk with my birth certificate. The model that we need to aspire to would allow for the systems that exist in the immigration department or division to securely access the information that exists in the civil registry through the use of some kind of moniker ID.
So I just want to, I know you're going on to a lot of explanation. And the question is, have you adopted any model?
I cannot say we have formally adopted that model from a policy perspective, but we have contributed towards architecture that trends in that takes us in that direction, member.
To Member Mark, I just want to direct a question to the Ministry of Finance. I'm seeing that there is a social and economic transformation division. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
It's not quite a division. It's just a portfolio that the officer would be responsible for providing oversight over some of the state enterprises.
But is it with one eye to transform our society and our economy?
If I may, we have various units within the investments division based on our classification of the sectors within which the state enterprises operate. And that is one of the portfolios. Of course, the state enterprises, when they are incorporated, they have specific mandates. And of course, much of which are probably like project management, but some of which are transformational.
Thank you. So while you're on your leg, so to speak, is the ministry satisfied with iGov's performance and its adherence to the manual?
Well, as the CEO alluded to, they slavishly, if you will, follow the requirements of the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual. And I must commend the company for being the most compliant state enterprise in relation to the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual, and we look forward to their continued compliance. They have been up to date in every aspect.
That's excellent. So congratulations there. Now, one of the things, we heard a lot of things coming out this morning about what they would like in terms of support and what they need to do more and to be better. What is the ministry going to do in terms of assisting the company in improving?
I would imagine that the company would be liaising closely with their line ministry in formulating plans and policies, as were alluded to at this meeting. And of course, the Ministry of Finance would support in whatever way, and given the limited resources that we possibly can. We also have open communication with the line ministry to assist in whatever way we can.
Member Mark.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just make a brief statement and then I'll ask a question. One question. The horse and buggy period versus the bullet train. The public service of the Republic, with no disrespect, reminds me of the horse and buggy in a period of the bullet train. Now, public service modernization and reform is supposed to be transformational and developmental, and particularly the context of service delivery to the citizenry of this country. Now, the ICT company is supposed to be a very important tool in this thrust towards transformation of the overall state of TNT through public service reform. But what I've heard so far this morning and into this afternoon, efforts are being made, but there are a lot of gaps and misalignments. And therefore, it brings me to the question, Mr. Chairman, to the Chief Executive Officer and to the Acting Permanent Secretary. Look, we are here to help as a committee, both the ministry and your company. I think it is incumbent upon both of you to let us know, given the challenges that you are faced with and the constraints, human, technical, financial, how can this committee recommend to the Parliament ways and means of bringing the public service from the horse and buggy era into the bullet train period? How can we do it? Because we want to help, and the citizens are crying out for help. They want services. They want them efficiently. They need it in an affordable kind of environment in terms of costs. So could you share with this committee? You can start off by indicating, and then you can put pen to paper and send your concerns and the areas that you would like us to assist to the Secretariat. So in our recommendations to the Parliament, we can help the Ministry of Public Administration and your company, Mr. Henry, to accomplish your goals and your objectives in the interests of the Republic and the people of this Republic. So could any one of you begin, and you don't have to be long because we are against time. You can always commit pen to paper and send your submission in a more comprehensive way to the Secretariat, and we will get them.
Well, member, since you've provided a way of escape via the pen, I suppose it would be remiss of me not to take that way of escape. But so as you said, the conversation today was about ICT, and particularly with respect to utilizing ICT for improved service delivery to the citizens, and of course improving the efficiency of government. Maybe from an iGov standpoint, if I may, it definitely speaks to financial resources to bring on the human resources that they need to design apps and solutions. From a Ministry of Public Administration side, of course, you recognize that the ICT is but one part of the service improvement process. There's the human resources, there's improving processes, there's the cultural element, which we look at from the public service culture, but then again, the public service fishes from the national pond. So there are other issues to deal with, but again, I will utilize the pen. Thank you.
Thanks for this opportunity, members of the committee. For us, I think we would have indicated a couple of things. Primarily, we need to get the governance arrangements in place. Because once we have that, I think it will only accelerate the development of e-services within our country. I think, as always, it would be remiss of me to not say the importance of financial resources to support our core infrastructure. But I must say that, and I think the public, if I may, is seeing it. There seems to be a renaissance of sorts with regard to IT in our country. Yes, maybe we could, not maybe, yes, we can do more. But I do believe that with a forum like this, which allows us to ventilate the issues and to share it and to sensitize, I think that is the direction I would really like to see more of. I have some specific tangible things, but I would be grateful for the opportunity to go back to the team to huddle, and then we will present comprehensive responses in writing.
Thank you all very much. We're coming towards the end, so may I just invite you to offer any concluding remarks you may have.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to give further information and to receive feedback and advice from the committee. All matters that would have been directed to the company, that couldn't be discussed here, we would love the opportunity, as already suggested, to respond in writing. In summary as well, based on the discussions, I would like to reiterate as we have said by the chair, with respect to the transformations that can happen. I draw your attention, for example, to what happened with mobile versus wired in parts of the world where certain infrastructures and certain nations were transformed in literally the blink of an eye. And this is the same thing with ICT. I draw you to one analogy and I will close. And I see ICT in this country as follows. Imagine you have someone who is a contractor and he builds this really nice house, but it's a house that most people may not be able to afford, let's say, without recourse to finance. That means that most people who would try to avail themselves of the house need to go through several things to get it done. And on the side of the contractor, they would also have to do certain things to ensure that the banks, etc., are comfortable with respect to providing the financing. So that contractor probably has just about 2% to do on the driveway, and everything else is done. And then you have these procedures or these requirements that need to be in place in order for the contractor to benefit as well as the homeowner to benefit. You're about 90% there, 98% there. But that 2% sometimes is extremely challenging. And to be very honest, I think that our ICT landscape as it is somewhat like that in many respects. People may beg to differ sometimes, but I also draw your attention to the fact that every 18 to 24 months, ICT changes. So while we may be at the forefront of something at some point in time, with the time continuum, things change. So I would really appreciate As I said, this opportunity to chat with you, and subsequent to this, any initiatives that would lead us to further the ICT agenda. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
I want to say thanks to the committee, the members, for the great questions, which allowed me to speak a lot. We at iGovTT, we are excited about the opportunity before us. We take our job very seriously, and we realize that we have a sacred responsibility. Every dollar that comes across the iGovTT is a dollar taken away from another activity. And it is something, again, I wish to emphasize, we take very seriously. We are confident that this country will continue to move forward, and we feel that we have a critical role to play in making that a reality. It would be remiss of me, Chairman, to not thank the members of my team who put together the information that you have before you. I wouldn't call names, but I want to say thank you, and what we have today would not have been possible without the fantastic team that exists at iGovTT. So thank you very much.
Chair, just want to express our own gratitude from the Ministry of Public Administration for the opportunity to appear before the committee and to respond to the questions that were posed. The Ministry of Public Administration, and I guess by extension iGovTT, are not entities that are always in the public glare. So this would have certainly been an opportunity for the broader society to hear what is happening within the ministry and the company, because ultimately, as you indicated at the start, ICT promises so much for Trinidad and Tobago and its development. So again, we appreciate the opportunity. From MPA standpoint, we do say hats off to iGovTT for the work that they've done, and we know that they will continue to do. Thank you.
From a corporate governance perspective, as we alluded earlier, we would like to commend the company for their compliance, and we look forward, as I said before, to their continued compliance, and we commit to supporting in whatever way we can in the Ministry of Finance.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Henry, Permanent Secretaries. Thank you all for your contributions. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this concludes our business today, and I would like to declare the meeting suspended. In closing, I would like again to thank iGov, the media, the viewing and listening audience. Thank you.